You're live. You might be live. You think you're live. Okay, usually I wait a few seconds before I start saying you're live, but I did the previous video, and I wasn't sure if I should rush and do this one or wait, but since the seasons are changing, get it over with and do it. I've done videos already about hats, vests, pilot shirts, and Indiana Jones outfits. So there's still quite a bit of overlap here for some of those other things. I did the Akubra hat video recently, but I didn't get the other one yet. But this is the more green color, and obviously I'm wearing more of a green shirt, even though this video is more focused on your summer colors or your desert-ish Savannah, Kalahari, Serengeti colors or whatever. But to launch, like I said, I've shown these hats before. But like here's one that can get called a safari hat in marketing, but obviously does not have anywhere near the width of the brim of this one that cost way more. And it has a kind of a heavy twill construction, but it does have some vents in the crown and a teardrop, typical kind of crease or whatever you call it. It's not as pronounced, because it hasn't been like worn in a ton. Okay, we're going blurry for some reason. That's annoying. Let's see if we can fix that. Better? No. Okay, better. But I don't know if this one was Dorfman Pacific or not. Just a random thing I found at the store one time a long time ago. Then of course we have the Outback. These ones are the kangaroo ones, so they're the lighter weight ones than the heavier suede cowhide ones. This one being not suede, it's the full grain. But they are a bit, the wind can take them. They didn't really come with any kind of proper strap or string or anything, so you might have to improvise something. This particular model, the Southern Cross, has some little bits of crown venting, but not a ton. And I hear kangaroo leather is one that doesn't particularly breathe very well, but some boots are still made with it. Your results may vary. This is a different model that is more similar to the one that I ordered that I talked about in the previous video where they sent me the wrong one, blah, blah, blah. But those are lightweight hats with a brim, again, still not quite as wide as this brim. But this is a heavier felt and some ventilation in the crown, I guess. And all that. Okay. Similarly, in the middle, we have the mesh crown kind of deal. I do have a full fabric version of this, where this one is more of a, I assume this is plastic and this is cotton, so I have ones that are cotton fabric here, but obviously hot weather appropriate, and hopefully won't burn your noggin too bad, a decent amount of shade. This one being a darker brown, of course, so you might want a lighter color. Okay. Oh, 2 points. Whereas like this guy who's not quite on his last legs, I had joked about why they put boonie hat vents in the mesh for looks, I guess. I don't know. But this is obviously one that I've worn a lot, and it's faded and sweated and nasty. And I added my own string that did not come with this. but it did have it probably did come with a string if I had gotten it, new from the factory or whatever, instead of at the surplus store kind of thing. And it has a bit of the inner sweatband that some of them don't have. I don't know what brand, Magellan, I think. But the tag is long gone, but the logo is still there. But basically the same exact thing. Those are kind of more disappointing than some of the other brim variations and things. Like I said, I did a massive hat video where I talked about all this before, but for those of you who are new, we might as well talk about hats. And then, of course, these Duluth ones that do have a pretty wide brim, but they're formless. They're kind of Gandalf hats without the point, right? The mesh is a little more maybe coverage, but still allowing the air to go through. So this is a pretty good hiking hat overall. I don't necessarily love the plastic things that can kind of whip around and smack you in the face and that kind of stuff. But again, a similar kind of inner sweatband. And don't know if they still offer these or not, but I've gotten them a couple times. I don't think I ordered them all the same year. I don't remember. And of course this one, well, I guess we'll stick with the mesh. This one's kind of a heavy, more structured hat, kind of a heavy duty feel to it. One of my favorites overall though, because again, this kind of thing, I don't know if I want to wear this hiking very much, whereas this I do wear hiking. It's a little harder to wear a bandana under this than some of the other hats, but because of the sweatband, it has this extra padding in the crown that none of the others has. It can make it a little bit warmer maybe, but also more comfortable, when you put this kind of heavier thing on your head, because this one weighs more than those previous three a little bit. It's also got waterproofing on the fabric that I've never really needed, and also a bit of dust because it's been neglected all winter. Oh, and of course it has the hat band. I guess I should show the little cowboy guy and whatnot. Don't know if you can still get those or not, but like I said, most of these, there is a sister version available. But the sizing on these I didn't like as much. I think this one's actually a small. Yeah, I had to get the small to keep it from kind of bouncing around on my head, so it's a little too tight, kind of like how this one's a little too tight, even though this one is only like a millimeter under my regular size or whatever, and it's still, like, I'm wearing it in the video and it's fine, but like it's pinching. It's, the leather is cutting into my forehead more than you'd feel it with one of these fabric kind of bands or whatever. Obviously, I haven't really worn this one. I have worn it, but it gets pretty sweaty. So yeah, typically if I'm out in the sun, I prefer the mesh thing. And again, with the sizing being kind of off, it's almost more of a souvenir than the hat that I use. But it doesn't get totally neglected. There are certain times of the year when I want that water repellency. But of course, if you're on an actual safari in an arid climate, might not need that at all. This guy is not really a safari hat, but he's a throwback to our one of our favorite movies. And I apologize, I didn't bring out the DVDs to hold them up, but I don't have all of them anyway. And I did bring accessories this time that I didn't show in the last video, but this was one of those coconut tropical vacation hats. And it had a hat band that was a more fun, colorful kind of hat band that you might want for. But if you've seen Hatari, of course, Pockets does wear a hat similar to this. The crown shape, almost the same. This one, of course, cost more than you'd want to spend for a hat that falls apart when you abuse it a little bit. But I've had it for quite some time, and another more souvenir than useful item at this point. And I had a stingier brim one that's kind of more of the blues man hat or the ska hat kind of thing. I don't know where it is. I'll find it hopefully in the next month or two before summer. This is the one I was going to wear for the video and then chose to wear this one instead because, like I said, the other one didn't come and it was easier to show off the wider brim. But I do have some other ones that are similar, like this with the Aussie, where you can pin up the side, but I don't know how useful that is. This band did not come with this hat. This is from an old cowboy hat way back when. I guess it's supposed to look like a rattlesnake, but it's also useful for a hippie headband. But it did come with this beaded leather strap, so it has that feature at least. And this is another one where it fits comfortably enough, and it's a decent twill fabric, cotton, but no ventilation. So we're having an even more sweaty experience than some of the others, as you can possibly well imagine. So that one gets neglected more than it used to ever since I got those other newer hats. And so it became, again, another kind of souvenir. Okay, so next we have a stack of boonie hats. And this was the one I was showing a lot in the last video just for the coloration. And I was saying there was another camo that was kind of similar that I thought was more appropriate for this video, so I didn't bother to bring it out. But yes, it is the old Open Country. They don't offer this exact pattern anymore. I was talking about Real Tree and Mossy Oak in the previous video, I think, and I don't remember which company this actually was. This particular one is just a Cabela's. It was one of the clearance items that Cabela's was getting rid of, and the fit is absolutely horrible, so I've never really worn it. I think I tried to wear it once and was like, oh God, no, and I'll find a kid someday and give it to them or whatever on the trail maybe. But they had done littler things than the standard, boonie vents. I can show that. Yeah. Well, you saw them already on that other hat, and I've done, again, a whole video about boonie hats. These ones are not even that good because they have more coverage than needed. This is one of the Rothko ones, so it's not the real camo either, which I do have the real camo somewhere, but it doesn't really matter because close enough. As you can see, it's not totally gray, but not totally green. But they are similar-ish. This is a little more yellow than a lot of the Army ones from that period. And then, of course, moving into them, we can get to the German one. I showed this one before where it's reversible, but of course this is very dark for arid condition, savanna kind of stuff. This being maybe more acceptable, but again, what camo you're allowed and what you're not in some places and blah, 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 I don't know. So still see people in the safari shows way back when wearing camo hats once in a while, but not a ton of camouflage clothing overall. Like there's this, which is not quite the tiger stripe either. Ran kind of small. I do. Oh, I do. Okay. I don't have the boonie hat, but I do have some of the desert tiger stripe here, so we'll talk about that more later. Okay. The coyote color instead of the lighter tan. So just for comparison, here's a. Yeah. So this is more of kind of a late summer for northern hemisphere color, autumny-ish. What that translates to in seasons in the bush, I don't know. But if you wear this enough times, it probably bleaches out and turns more into khaki. This, of course, being one of the hats that I loved the idea of when I got it, but found out how very quickly how sweaty this one is too, even with the little vents, and it has the vegetation loops that you don't really need. But it's a Dwarfman Pacific twill, and I have like half a dozen of these in different colors, and I hardly ever wear any of them because, like I said, they are definitely sweatier hats than the standard rips. This is the ripstop. If you can see the little squares, I don't know, instead of the twill. So this is like, the pants that I'm wearing, and this is lighter weight. But of course, here we have the bandolier, that, the heavier duty nylon label instead of the Cotton. Here you have the plastic doohickey instead of the little leather tab thing. So, you know, two sides of the other coin or whatever. Then to finish off with the camo, of course, there's always the 6-color desert, and this one has a much stingier brim than you might want. But this one also has a stingier brim than you might want. But the 3-color camo, which of course nowadays is a lot more prevalent, prominent, whatever, easy to find, come by, all that. Okay, so that was hats. You know, mostly in a nutshell, most of the hats. But of course, the one I was saving that I didn't do in the previous video and I didn't do in the other hat videos, of course, the, the pith helmet. This is, obviously it's an iconic look, but it's not my favorite hat. This is the correct style, though. The other one with the pointed front and the swoopy back is a strictly military look, and good luck finding one in your correct head size if you're not a very small child or whatever. But this one's another Dorfman Pacific one. So it has a terry cloth sweatband and a leather contraption and some vents. This one, though, being the mesh. I don't know if you can see through that correctly. You can kind of see the posters or whatever. So it's another one where you might be worried that there's not enough coverage for the sun to still bake your brain through the holes. I don't know. But of course, the other ones, the ones where you are supposed to soak them overnight and then they keep your head cool and all that. Like I said, I don't know where to find those. It probably costs like $300. Whereas this one was like, you know, 20 or 30 bucks. They've probably gone up since then. They're probably more like 60 bucks now or something. But again, not the Postman ones, the plastic ones, which I don't know what the purpose of those is except to bake your brain. This one, the air does flow through it pretty nice. I think I hiked in it once, but again, the brim is a little bit narrow. The weight is not terrible. You don't really notice it. But of course, the adjuster thing, you know, you might or may not like it. This one has a Velcro, which obviously is not very traditional. And then the chin strap I never used. They usually are supposed to have adjustments and things with the chin strap. This one, of course, is probably more decorative, ornamental, and all that. What does it say? Dorfman Pacific, made in China. Oh, there you go. And then 100% Toyo. So it is one size fits most. So it's whatever Toyo is or does or whatever. Let's put it here. Decorative. Yeah. But yeah, that had the the unique thing about that one is the sun kind of comes through and makes kind of patterns when you're walking. And so it's kind of disorienting at times, especially at first when you're like, what is that? And then you realize what it is and you kind of get used to it, but I never quite got all the way used to it. So again, only wore it once hiking. Your results may vary. Let's do the vests next. I did a whole video about vests like 6 months ago, so I only brought in a couple this time. I think I did a couple in the other video because they were the other color, but I didn't bring in all the exact same vests in different colors, even though I have a couple that are overlappy. But this kind of thing where you have 8 million pockets, and again, a lot of the pockets will overlap, and this one has some satin kind of thing going on, and it has a back cargo pocket, but it also has this nice mesh deal going on for those of you who don't like to be all sweaty. It still has a yoke. I don't know. The epaulets are fake. Well, they're real, but they're fake in the sense that they are, you can unsnap them, but they also have Velcro, which just makes them, I guess it'll hold your strap secure more than you've ever imagined. So you might want to remove the the sticky part of the Velcro and just leave the fuzzy part if you want functioning epaulets. If you can even find this vest, I don't know. I've had it for quite a while, and it was kind of a unique find. But it does have a decent amount of pockets and a decent amount of ventilation. But it's not a strictly clay shooting type of vest, so you might not like all the features the way they are. You could, remove some things, and if you were careful and didn't damage the mesh too bad, you could put a pad here for your shoulder if you really wanted to, I suppose. Or you could just buy a clay vest that has that kind of stuff going on instead. Which of course would have much less pockets though. So it just depends on what amount of pockets and things you require. Whereas this guy, I forget where I found this guy, but this guy's a pretty good one. It has working epaulets. I put the patch on there. That guy was not included. The snaps are kind of I don't really like the snaps, but the pockets are nice and big for a change, so you can actually put stuff in there. I can fit my hand in there, which is like unique for any kind of vest. And it has these extra kind of, I don't know, shell pockets or whatever you want to call them. And of course it has some overlapping pockets for whatever reason. There's always some kind of thing that they want to do that where they stack all your pockets, because then it has interior pockets that are also stacked. So a little bit on the heavy side of the fabric, a little bit on the heavy side with the overlapping pockets. That kind of thing can, again, warm you up and bulk you out. Down here, we don't have hand warmer pockets. We just have cargo pockets. But it also has some stuff like this going on down in the cargo pocket, and has these double snap deals, so you can bellows it out a little bit and still close it. And don't ask me where I found this, but maybe look for that and find it sometime or somewhere. And then it has these little things on the pull tab, but it does have a zipper instead of buttons, and it doesn't have a close feature here or a drawstring like a lot of the things will. And as I always caution, if you commit to a vest, you're kind of stuck wearing it because you can't tie it around your waist or whatever. But you can always take off your undergarment and wear it by itself if it's not too uncomfortable. So anyway, this one I want to save for later. I showed this jacket off a little bit in the last one, and so I have the same one here. I think in tan. Oh yeah, but it's more of a darker khaki, same as that last vest. I guess I don't really need to show that one too much. Again, and that one's the yellow color. You need to get down to these sooner than later. Because we're going to do jackets second again. Okay. So the one I'm wearing, which is more gray than khaki, doesn't go down very far. A lot of them will have that problem now. This one doesn't have matching pockets on both sides, and it has a 3-button instead of a 2-button. And the cargo pockets are not super big or anything. The Redford jacket in I don't know if it's the same one he's wearing in the thumbnail as the one where he gets off the horse, because he changes outfits a few times. But I feel like he has a longer drape going down, and good luck finding that. Whereas these were, I think this one was Hay-Band and that one was Sportsman's Guide. So if you're getting them kind of inexpensive, you kind of get what you get. And this, of course, has another ripstop fabric. I don't know if you can really see that. So it's kind of a lightweight cotton. I can wear it just around in, like a June evening. This is perfectly fine. And it's basically the same fabric as a typical army blouse. So this was the other camo that I was talking about earlier. So the slight difference is, you know, again, with an army blouse, you still have the cargo pockets down here. This is an older style one, of course, when they were called BDUs before they changed everything to the tactical stuff. So now all the pockets have different configurations, and the fabric will be more nylon than cotton, and blah, 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 and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. But these had reinforced arms, though, that I don't have like any suede patches on this particular one. I don't think any of these are reinforced, actually, but typically you might want to do something like that if you're really going to be worried about it. But of course, it has this sleeve tabs with the adjusters with buttons, a standard collar with a shirt button instead of lapels. This having not very big lapels, and again being a 3-button, not a 2-button. But here it's a blouse, and the placket is just covering the buttons. So you got, you know, 4 or 5 buttons hidden by the camo. And then, of course, you got the two. There's different the Vietnam ones, they had more of a larger chest pocket at an angle. And then the 80s ones were more like this or something. But this camo, there was a couple different camos and blah, blah, blah. Again, I don't know which places may or may not allow you to wear a camouflage, but this is, you know, a desert-oriented pattern that's, you know, jungly, but could also be grasslands. So, yeah, I'll just do this one first. So this is the one I'm wearing, and the exact same thing in the different color. Okay. So I don't really need to go over this too much, but it has no real adjuster. For some reason, this button is there just for looks. I had that removed from this one when I had the sleeves tailored, so it wouldn't be so long, and I just never got around to it with this one, I guess. And it has a seam up the back, which, you know, is typically kind of the hallmark of a not great garment. Probably a center single back vent for a little bit of range of motion, but it doesn't have any bi-swing stuff going on here. I didn't really talk about this in the last video, but I think I showed it in a couple of the shirts and things. Like I said, it's got these kind of shoulder pads that doesn't really need. They're more there for looks than function. But again, just a lightweight, inexpensive sport coat. Comparing with this monstrosity that I got, I think, from also Hayband. I don't remember. But it does have better pockets. I might remove the pockets and put them on something else, especially with this bellows look. It's a fake bellows look, and it's lined with satin, so you can't even bellows it out. And didn't even come with any buttons or Velcro or anything. It's just a flap. Same with down here. But they are a nice size, at least for looks, more than function. But I don't like this micro suede at all. It doesn't look as dressy as it's meant to. So overall, this was kind of an experiment and a fail. But it does have sport jacket button styling more. It does have a... It's only 2 buttons, but it's shaped more like a 3-button with a high buttoning point. So it should really have a 3rd button up here that it doesn't have. I think that's part of the problem, is if I could button it up here, I would probably like the look of it a little bit more, but I mostly wear it open because whatever. And I don't wear it often, but I don't never wear it. But it's more for casual walks and things. If I was going out to an actual thing, like I said, I don't think I would prefer this fabric. And I imagine this would be just a gross, sweaty, nasty polyester experience if you were actually out on a real trail or whatever. So these, it's going to be a lot more jackets this time. I know this video is going to be pretty long compared to the other one, even, maybe. I had showed the light green one with the billion pockets and the removable sleeves and all that. So again, if you want the jacket that converts to a vest, That's another option, but I'm not showing that one again this time because I have these other ones that are more traditional style. So we're jumping a little bit in eras because there's the kind of around World War I era of out of Africa where you're a little more Edwardian styling overall, and then there's kind of like I guess the 50s into the 60s kind of safari movie boom, because that was when they could actually go to Africa and film movies on location and that kind of thing. So there was sort of a shift from that more traditional style clothing to more utilitarian clothing, and we get movies like Hatari and Mogambo where now it's the white hunter or whatever who lives there, you know, but he's running a business, I guess, more than just, you know, being a freelancer. Does that make sense? And so their outfits are a little more, I guess, blue collar modified. Does that make sense? And so the Cabela's stuff that came out kind of reflects that look a little bit more. So that's what that green one I was showing. I had showed this one before and what the sleeve plackets were and everything, and I forget which ones of these I modified. Okay, so this one is slightly modified. I had cut the placket off to make it more like what I'm wearing, so I could wear a shirt under it instead of wearing it as just a shirt. It has the kind of shooting patches with the extra layer of fabric there. It has the bellows pockets that are, it has a drawstring, I think, at the waist. I don't remember. Yes, drawstring with these plastic guys again. Again, a full button collar. So more like a military blouse from what, starting around World War II-ish military styling, as opposed to, again, the older field jackets that look more like sport jackets. But here, just in a different color, more matching the hat, more of a spring, dusty olive-ish, than a full khaki. So you can see the darkness there. This will fade, of course. This will fade too, and then this might be a little bright when it does fade. But then you have, of course, not army. So, well, a faded army green more than a forest green or olive, less olive, or I don't know. But again, this being a nice pine green like Redford has in the film, but this being polyester blend, not going to fade all that much. And sweaty or not cotton like these, which are discontinued, but you might still be able to find them. So this one I had shortened the sleeve entirely, and oh, you can see that it also has a sleeve pocket and this metal thing that's kind of annoying. I don't know why I didn't cut this off. This D-ring, but yeah, I went ahead and modified this to look like the one the guy had in, I think, Mogambo, and I think there was a similar one in Hatari. Still has the working epaulets though. But I figured with the lighter color, if I'm wearing it in warmer weather, I really don't need long sleeves 4 times over or 6 times over, whatever. This one's a size large, so I think this one still fits. I think one of these other ones is medium. Yeah, this one's the medium. So unfortunately, the one I have with the sleeves, I don't know if I can still wear this one. It might be too small. But these two, I can still wear them. So I'd gotten all the colors and yada yada yada. Oh, here's another one. Yeah, another one I had modified. Right, I left the long sleeves, but I didn't. But this one, yeah, medium. This is one of the ones that I got first that I can't fit anymore. So unfortunately, I spent the money to get the sleeves done, and now it's too small. But I still have the short sleeve guy and the green one. So more similar to that now. See, because part of the reason I wanted to do the safari video, because back in the winter when I did the field jacket fail video and all that, I was slightly preoccupied with all those autumn videos by like Gentleman's Gazette and whatever. Oh, we've gone kind of blurry again. Sorry. Where they're always talking about safari jackets or field jackets or whatever, and most of the ones that they show are not good. Or I don't know how good they, or well, they might be fine for streetwear, what you're doing with them, but for a true correct look, again, this is the one I should be wearing to look more like the Robert Redford one. It's not as long of a drape, I think, as his, and it is still only a single vent, and it does have a satin lining, which of course, again, would be miserable if you're actually hiking around, but for actual looks. But it does also have a mesh interior, and surprisingly, it's from a company that's not terribly expensive. And 2-button front. The lapels are not ridiculous like the other one where it needs another button. The pockets do not have a proper flap though, and they don't have a bellows, and they do have a double pocket on top of it to just drive me insane. But overall, a nice twill fabric, and it was not terribly expensive. And so I got that to look more proper than, again, an army jacket. But again, yeah, more for looks than for real use. Oh, and of course the epaulets are functional but different. You're not going to be able to undo the button because they put the point heading in the wrong direction and no buttons, and they put a buttonhole here for aesthetics and no other functional use. But oh, actually, I'm wrong. There is an under button there that you'll never ever use because you're not going to button your lapel. Okay, this was the one I was showing earlier. Again, same thing as that green one, just in a darker, more of an autumn color. This might be a little darker than you want for out and about, but then again, like I said, this other tan might be too light, a smidge. There's other stuff called stone, which I don't know what's the difference between beige and off-white. Is beige kind of a non-term? I don't know. Where you might think it's almost too white. You might want to dye it closer to a little bit darker of a tan, even darker than this maybe, or the light green. I never tried it, but I guess you can use like autumn leaves or even maybe lawn clippings to achieve that effect, but I don't know how color fast that is. But you can, fill a bucket with water and lawn clippings and see what kind of green you come up with if you're really motivated. But this, of course, a Sportsman's Guide deal, not terrible. Again, it's a canvas fabric. I had talked about this in the description in the previous video, where you have kind of 3 or 4 weights of canvas that you'll typically find in clothing. So this one's a little bit heavier than the LL Bean shirts, but I think sometimes it depends on the weave. Like it can be heavier, but still the weave can be kind of open. So how easily it can get a hole, I don't know. Because I had pants, they were the JCPenney ones, and they were canvas, and so I thought they would hold up really well like the Levi's ones. The Levi's ones lasted forever, and they were indestructible. The JCPenney ones, I almost blew out the crotch after like one day in Yosemite. So your results may vary. You kind of, whereas on the other hand, this one that I've been waiting to show, it's been sitting here for months because I forgot to show it in the other video. But this is not the LL Bean field jacket. It's a lighter weight model, but the newer field jackets, I think, are more this type of canvas and this weight of fabric. They might not be the same as the old good ones because I showed that one in the previous video. But this is called the Barn Coat and has the corduroy backing here. It doesn't have any buttons. It has lower flat pockets and then the Hunter hand warmer pockets that are in the wrong place for most people for comfort. But it has the wooden buttons. It has an all the way up collar, no lapels. corduroy instead of leather, which a lot of people complained about the shift from that. But I find that you can't throw the leather in the wash, so I don't know why they would like that better. A little bit of adjustment for the cuffs. The sleeves on the field coat were long on me, so I usually have to roll them up, and I don't like the look of it. But this, again, now this is a true stone. See how light this is even compared to the khaki? It's even lighter. So it's nice and bright for reflecting the sun, and it's a good weight of canvas if you need something that's a little bit warmer or tougher on a cool. But yeah, it might be a little too bright for if you're trying to blend in, right? Because again, we're not necessarily wearing camouflage, and we are walking around. You're not hiding from all the game per se. But this I thought was kind of a similar decent look for the Redford, but again, wrong lapels, wrong button system. No, epaulets, no shoulder things, no cargo chest pockets. But again, a nice lighter weight option than the older field jackets, or coats. But I think that the newer ones, they're skimping on the fabric and they're skimping on some other stuff. So this might be the same canvas you're getting instead of that heavy duty sailcloth that they used to use, or might still use, don't know. And so an example of a shirt in stone, or even lighter, even brighter. We'll talk about shirts in a minute. But just to show that color. Okay, so I still have 2 jackets left. I thought I had another one. But I think that's. But yeah, if we were going to, like I said, if you were going to compare, like this is just straight up cotton. The Cabela's, you could get something like this kind of made up or modify something that you have, like an army. You could modify an army shirt to more closely resemble something like that, because you can just add a pocket on the sleeve and add some epaulets and things and whatnot, and kind of turn the blouse into more of a safari item. The placket in the front, of course, being slightly detrimental because you don't have the open face buttons. You don't have this same bellows pockets with the look, especially if you have the Velcro tab ones and blah, blah, blah. But overall, again, basically an army shirt. So this also basically an army shirt, but a little bit different fabric. This is a canvas that's lighter weight than the previous canvas, but a little heavier weight than the LL Bean shirt canvas. But it does have a lot of the similar features to the Cabela's, but costing a bit more, but probably fabric that's going to hold up a little better. It has extra features like this button thing that closes your side vents, and now we see the articulation in the shoulders that I was talking about before. I don't think any of these other ones have. Does this have? I threw it over here too soon. No. Seam up the back too, in fact. Seam up the back. Button cuff with a big thing. So yeah. So this one you do have a little bit more articulation on your back. You don't have a seam up the back. You don't have a game bag, surprisingly. Just an open back. So this one should be a pretty comfortable item for me to use on the trail for real. For change, big epaulette. Pretty big pockets. Probably no interior pockets. We'll find out. It's been a while since I opened up this baggie. No, it has extra flap junk, but no pockets. But, oh, what's that? Oh, just an ID. Oh, it does have a drawstring. And it came with some extra buttons on the waistband, but yeah, otherwise it's just a big open. It's, yeah, single ply, not lined, I think. Yeah. But, oh, it does have a zipper passport pocket hidden in the inside of the one. One side has a hidden pocket, the other side does not. So you don't have 10,000 overlapping pockets, though, which is what I absolutely wanted. So this guy to the rescue. Slight upgrade in some ways from the Cabela's, but less, cutesy features. Like, again, it doesn't have this kind of quilty thing going on. It does have the epaulettes, slightly different epaulettes. It does have the drawstring. It does have venting and more articulation. The Cabela's one having a slight, what do you call it, a dart more than a vent. Whatever. And this one, I had returned a couple, but this being again, we're going with the less khaki and more British tan or British khaki. Even though all khaki originated with British, I think this gets called British khaki. Which is the more traditional true color? I don't know. But this is obviously the more common. And the color is this beige? I don't know. Probably more closely associated with U.S. military stuff and English stuff, whereas this now more of an aberration, I would say. But similar to that coyote and some of the other, this matches perfectly that like one half. Since it's all the way at the opposite end of the room. Yeah. Nice blend, but this is a heavier weight fabric than this. Oops, or that other one. And we get to the part of the video where stuff starts going on. That's all right. I don't really want to take this all apart because I'm just going to put it back in the bag. But the big feature here being the belt and ginormous pockets. But I did have to return this to get the larger size. And it was not cheap, although I might have got this one on the sale price. I don't remember. And I don't know if Peterman will bring it back or not. They tend to do some stuff recurring more than other stuff. And so there's similar things floating around that I may have owned that didn't fit right. I'm pretty sure I tried this one on. But the twill, it's a twill, not a canvas, but it's a heavy twill. It's heavier than maybe even a pair of Orvis pants. And I didn't bring in the Orvis pants that match this in the color, but I do have those and the ultimate khakis. But again, not the khaki color, that color. So yeah, if you wanted to see pants, I mean, this is a lighter weight pair of Dockers that is not the same as that. Am I supposed to do shirts next or pants? Well, I guess pants it is then. So I would not necessarily recommend the pleated pants, but if that's what you have, then that's what you have. I don't know. This is more dressy, the sheen of chino Dockers. There's other ones that are a little more of a less of a shiny finish, less of a sateen, I guess. I don't have those in here. The one thing I don't have floating around. So the ones that, oh, a vest. I missed a vest. Although, like I said, I've done vest. This is another hay band one. It's not a clay vest. It's another hiking traveler vest. Again, extra pockets instead of not. It's got the mesh thing. Yada, yada, yada. Sorry about that. I knew I had another vest that I wanted to show. Didn't know where it was. Okay. But I'm not going to take it out of the bag now. Similarly, then we have the Blair pants. They sell these in pleated, but they also sell them in cargo pants. So, of course, I would recommend the cargo pants, which is the point I was just making. It's a slightly different fabric than the Dockers, but probably slightly less expensive. This, on the other hand, I showed these before. I think in the Indiana Jones video or the pilot video or some other video. Same company? Yeah. Blair. These were some cargo pant hiker things. They have some elastic going on up here. This pair is pretty faded. This is a different fabric weight though, and these are technically canvas, not twill. So I prefer these for kind of hiking than office casual. Whereas those are office casual, but you could wear them if you had to, because they're an okay twill. And here's the less faded version. But it's just a standard military style pant for the most part. You have, you know, flat pockets, cargo pockets on the side of the leg where they belong instead of in the goofy spots like the 7 pocket hiking pants and all that. They don't have the drawstring at the cuffs though. I suppose you could add something like that if you got them in a longer length. So that's one thing I like about the BDUs is you have the drawstrings. I talked about this in the previous video, but I didn't bring any of them in for this particular video. Whereas, what's this? This is an even lighter weight version of a cargo pant that they sell. It's still a twill, not a canvas. I can see it good. Okay. This is exactly what I might recommend in terms of fabric type and weight. This is a pair of shorts, of course, not pants, but they do sell pants and shorts. I'm just realizing that these are shorts, but it doesn't matter. Shorts and pants, either or. Obviously, most people would think a sport jacket looks kind of dumb with shorts, but if you're out actually on the range or whatever in the bush belt, might be, you know, slightly more the way you want to go because you might need the pockets and, you know, but you might also want pants for thorn abrasions and snakes or whatever. Whereas these are the same as the ones I'm wearing. Sure. It's just these are tan instead of the greenish color. See if I can get that. See the difference. And I showed these before. They're less comfortable than the other fabric. They're a little more stiff, but they're a little bit thicker, a little heavier. So again, it depends. Do you want more durable or do you want more comfortable for heat? So I might pack a pair of this depending on the weather. The cargo pockets are a little bit different. It has a snap instead of a button, which, you know, snaps are kind of but it does have an extra thing. These had extra pockets in the thing with the thing, and I took them to the tailor and had the middle thing removed. So that cost me a few extra bucks on the pants and the shorts to modify this, whereas those I didn't have to modify at all. They're just they're just a cargo pocket. But these, I might as well take them out of the bag because it's almost summer new. These have elastic. You see, these have Velcro instead of buttons, and they don't have anything too extreme going on here, just more Velcro. Cargo pocket. If somebody's watching this without the sound, they're going to be so confused, right? But they also have this zipper hidden pocket in the front, but only on the one side. So it can be annoying, but it's not too terrible. But yeah, I have this in pants and shorts, and I wear this pretty often. So that's kind of a summer staple for me, those. Whereas these, again, a little heavier weight. I'm wearing them now because this time of year, instead of jeans, they're a little bit lighter weight than jeans by a smidge. But basically the same thing, but with a button at the top instead of a thing, and still has a zipper, and no reinforced knees, though it has this fake seam that I don't really like for no reason. So you might want to put a reinforced knee on something like that. And second pair. Yeah, same thing. So 2 folders of those. What I was talking about before is these kind of nylon shorts. I think these are nylon blend, or maybe these are polyester. No, these are the polyester ones. 65 poly. Again, this might be a little darker than you want. This is brown. The one pair is more faded than the other. But overall, there's a little bit of elastic. This is hay band. You can't really read that, but they're fine for what they are. They have snap cargo pockets instead of buttons again, and they have decent sized pockets. A little bit of extra piping and junk for looks, but no actual functionality. So I have a couple pairs of those in different colors. More of an obvious. Again, the 7 pocket ones, I had a lot of these from Cabela's. I've been able to find them from Blair and Bass Pro Shops. So this is similar to what I showed in the other video. Another one that I can, these are kind of my standard trail shorts. If I'm going to wear shorts, I probably wear this more than the polyester ones. So not too long, but the pockets in the front thing, I thought that was kind of an Indiana Jones, not an authentic look, but an interesting style choice, you know, to mix up the Indiana Jones look a little bit. Again, you got the swoop instead of the true old army pockets, and then you have this big thing. Problem with this is you have to have the thin belt more than a lot of regular belts. A jeans belt is going to be hard to fit. Oh, forgot to do this. We have passed part 1 and 2, and we're actually, back it up if you're really worried about it, we're actually in part 3 now. Part 3. pants being part 3, right? Totally forgot about that. So I looked at the belts. But again, kind of a standard khaki color, a canvas weave. I don't know if you can see that. It's in the middle. Again, a little bit heavier than the LO Bean shirts. Blouse. Then the other ones are these. I have these in a couple different colors. This is the more tan color. This is also hay band, I think. Don't hold me to that. This one's called taupe. Not quite the exact same thing as this fabric, but close. This one maybe being a smidge heavier weight. I'm not positive. The pockets are slightly different. It's about the only real thing to get excited about. This has the elastic in the waistband. This has no elastic in the waistband. This has these pull tabs, but also Velcro closures. Has a slightly different Velcro closure in the back instead of the 2. So almost the same pants, but slightly different color. This one a little more brown. I also have a darker version of this that's supposed to be green, but it's even more brown. Those are the ones I showed, I think, in the last video that I was wearing, but they were the faded ones, not the darker ones. So not completely accurate depiction or whatever. So, yeah. But yeah, those basically cotton. And cotton, of course, getting more expensive now. Then your other one, they don't, I complained about this in the last video, they don't offer these without cargo pockets anymore, but the LO Bean Tropic pants. This, a lighter weight, a nice for the hot weather, but again, I would be a little more worried if this got snagged on something that you would be getting a tear in your pants. And of course, these are what, $60, or at least when I bought these. They're probably more now. Again, the belt loops are a little bit small too, so not accommodating. Better with a dress belt almost than a jeans belt. But they had a couple different colors. There was green, there was blue. Again, this is more of a British khaki. They also had it in a stone. So this is what I'm talking about, where you might want to dye that. This is almost white, but it's not optic white, because, you know, obviously if I hold it up against a white paper, it looks less white, but it's still pretty much white. And then, another Easter egg. This that I showed in the vests, maybe, I don't remember. This was an LO Bean shirt that I modified to resemble a vest with some army short cargo pockets. I'll talk about that more in a minute. And then, of course, the J.C. Penney standard cargo, similar to a military with the buttons, except the buttons are exposed instead of under a placket slash pockets, but it does have outie pockets, not like the old army ones where you couldn't put anything in them because it'd come right out. Like keys would be about the only thing. No flaps on your back pockets. And they typically sell these in a bunch of colors. And this, of course, being khaki. That's just the redhead one. Same. So moving to part 4 4 4 4 4 4 do accessories real quick. Like I said, there's your typical military, army, Indiana Jones belt with this buckle. There's also the open face buckles. Again, less of a width than a jeans belt. Slightly. This is going to be almost impossible to do with this camera. Not a ton of difference, but just enough that certain belt loops won't work. Of course, this being, again, more of the modern-ish maybe look, but not, these buckles not exactly great for holding fast. Whereas the leather being more of the turn of the century, you know, the Redford look. I took off this belt to put on the one that I'm wearing. That is the green version of this, which is from Orvis from way back when. I don't know, these cost more than I wanted to spend. They were like $60, but they were made to look like Army web belts of the canteen carrier variety, but you couldn't actually securely put a canteen in this and feel good about it. But you could probably put a pouch in it, a little knife pouch or something, if you really wanted to utilize the holes. I don't think they'll ever offer this again because it probably wasn't cost effective, but was an option at the time, so I got it in green as well. And then, of course, Army belts in khaki. I also have it in, you can find them in camo colors as well. Black, navy, that kind of thing. The shiny buckle, I shouldn't, well, of course, might be too shiny, so you might want to get a black buckle or colored. The one typically they get scraped. The black gets scraped off, and you end up with, you know, the chrome color or whatever. But it won't be as shiny as this. So that could be a thing if you don't want shiny. Another thing I didn't mention before was bandanas. Of course, there's kind of neutral colors you can get. This one's almost the color, but I think if you wanted a bigger rag for whatever reason, for using as a head cloth or keeping the dust out or something, you might want something bigger than a standard cowboy. I tend to use this either, you know, as a cover the back of the neck or as a headband for catching the sweat for hiking, but your results may vary. You might, you maybe want to cut a big square off a t-shirt or something. Okay, so finally going to part 5. Part 5. Okay, shirts. And I brought 100 of them. Believe me, I brought almost all of them. Again, that's the shorts of the pants that I'm currently wearing. True khaki. True khaki. True khaki, whatever the difference is. So again, I showed this one in the last video. This is slightly different color of the one I'm wearing, but this is the LL Bean ones that are the all cotton, but they still have the sateen kind of texture. We've gone blurry again. I hate this thing. Okay, there we go. Yeah, there's just literally nowhere to put the stuff anymore. Just throwing it everywhere. Like I said, I showed this one and the last one a nice lightweight. I don't have anything in khaki that's the exact same thing as this, but I do have in khaki those and this. Oh, forgot about these pants. Well, whatever. This is the ones that I showed in the bag before, I think. Maybe. I don't know. It's just another Hayband one, I think. Or this is actually Blair. The Blair Adjust-A-Band. These are closer to that fabric of the Dockers that I was talking about that I didn't bring, except for cargo pockets. So they're kind of in the middle of the weight of those ones and those other ones. So either or, again. These are they have this in a office casual version with no cargo pockets with the pleats. That again, I would not prefer to wear. This might be a little heavier than I want to wear, but it is a pretty good match for the Peterman shirts. Peterman offers different versions of this every year or whatever, and Territory, same thing. With the epaulettes, with the bellows pockets. They call it the officer shirt sometime, and then they call it, then they redid them and they called them the mountain shirt or something without the epaulettes, but with a different pocket flap design. So I spent extra to get a shirt that I like slightly less or whatever, because I'd rather have the epaulettes just for that Dr. Jones look. But they have this in long and short sleeves. Of which, anywhere but here, right? This, of course, was the Cabela's one in the lightweight, the short sleeve, no epaulettes, but it does have the semi-bellows pockets. So this is the closest thing to that darker, closest thing to this one with the lighter weight fabric, whereas this is a much heavier fabric. You're going to notice the weight of the twill here that you can't really see on the camera. Yeah, try as you might. Not going to show up. Okay. So that's always the thing. Whereas this one, of course, was the Sportsman's Guide version that is about the right weight for this time of the year. I've been wearing the green one, but the fabric itself is kind of and it's thicker and heavier and hotter than you're probably going to want. And it doesn't have any epaulettes. Whereas, again, the Duluth version that they discontinued, same fabric weight, but a softer, nicer hand to the fabric, does have the epaulettes, does have the flap pockets with the buttons. But again, a little bit heavier and warmer than you probably want. Same with the Orvis field shirts. This one being the short sleeve one. This will come in the long sleeve one. But this is more of a canvas feel than a twill. And they have different, yeah, this is kind of a medium canvas. They have different fabrics, I think, in different shirts and different one. They discontinue some and bring back others and blah, blah, blah. But this was one of my pilot looking ones, but a little, again, heavier than I might want. But a different feel than, again, the polyester, which is the same as this. The old Cabela's Safari, where, again, they had offered these in cotton for a while and then discontinued that. And I don't know if Bean still offers them or not. But again, this one is more of a stone than a true khaki. Cabela's never quite had all the colors I wanted in you know, they were discontinuing them kind of at the time, and so I was kind of buying some of the one and some of the other and the da-da-da, and how'd that go? Whereas Orvis only offers like 3 colors or something. It's like blue, tan, and green or whatever. So it's like, narrows it down real fast. Yeah. Yeah, Orvis had also offered linen ones. This is one of the short sleeve. When I showed the green one in the previous, these I bought a while ago, and there was a newer version and an older version. The older version was more refined and nicer, but I got them in like medium way back when. But the mediums were still kind of generous, so I can still kind of wear them, unlike a lot of other brands where I can't even fit in a large anymore. This is the newer version from more recently, and this is an extra large. I had to actually get extra large for this to fit. But you can see it's a very lightweight. So again, if you're worried about it getting snagged on stuff and whatnot, yeah, but it's also way more breathable than the previous fabric. Or again, this one that I showed, which is the same exact shirt as that other one, but in the super bright stone color, whereas this one's a little bit closer to the British khaki with more of a yellowy look. And so then, of course, you have the English camo blouse, which is kind of a blend of almost the two, right? Or not quite stone, maybe kind of in between there. The British blouses, you can find them used, maybe pretty cheap. The fabric is decent weight. It's not, I don't think it's quite as heavy as the American twill, but it is still not the ripstop, so it does get a little bit sweaty. I had the boonie hat that matches, and it has the drape thing over the neck that I don't like. You have to kind of take that out. It's too heavy. Catches your heat too much. But the British, they don't have epaulettes. They have a big chest pocket and no lower cargo pockets, waist pockets, no drawstrings. They have kind of funky buttons. This kind of thing going on. But again, you can find this pretty inexpensive if you can wear a camo. You might have some issues with the patches or whatever. You know, again, you might have to remove that kind of stuff. If you're worried about, representing a foreign nation in a foreign country or something, if you're traveling. And of course, it's more of a true military look than a classic safari look, right? Similarly, we have the tactical thing. These are not as breathable as I had hoped or expected, but they do have the vent back that I talked about in the previous video. So I didn't bring in all the nylon ones and everything. I just figured one would be enough an example. This one has some like underarm vents. Not really a bi-swing gusset or anything going on there. I bought this just for standard hiking shirts. It just has Velcro chest pockets and button front, and it has the bit of the mesh. I don't know if this version is still available. I got this a while ago. But again, if it's a little more sweaty than I might prefer. Peterman had these a couple years ago. I don't know if they'll bring them back or not. It's a ripstop. It's a little bit heavier, but I don't think it's quite as heavy as the full blouse, the camo thing that I showed with the tiger stripe one. But you got nice big epaulettes, big buttons, decent bellows pockets. This one's a large, so I don't remember when I got this, but it should still fit. And then a sport shirt with a pattern, maybe. I don't know. I mean, it does have flap pockets, but no epaulettes. But this is not quite a seersucker, but it still gets a little bit of ventilated with the weave. And of course, most seersucker you won't find in a useful color. This is like a beige. I also have this in white and some tropical colors and things. So this is about the only one that I would maybe, again, if you get, you can find white pretty easy. So you could dye it again if you really wanted to. But like most seersucker comes in like this kind of thing, right? not safari friendly. This was the guy I showed in the previous video. This fabric weight and everything. The problem with it was too heavy to wear well in conjunction with the jacket, because the jacket was about the same weight as the shirt. So it's kind of a double whammy, a little bit too much. But each on their own, you know, kind of works. But this fabric being a canvas as opposed to this, less sweaty. Again, this being the polyester, this being a cotton. But this was called the Serengeti shirt. And this was the alternate pockets. This is the more recent pocket configuration instead of the box. And still got the epaulettes. We still got the pockets on in the sleeve tabs. Still have the standard button cuff, standard placket, zipper, hidden passport over under things. Again, a little bit harder to find that in the colors that you're going to want and the sizes that you might want. Comparatively, of course, then we have the LL Bean. This was called something else, and this is the short sleeve one, and it's more of a British tan. This is the standard one that I was showing earlier in the long sleeve with the cotton. This one being a medium, so too small. This one being a medium, so too small. But this, I don't know if they still offer this or not, but this is the long sleeves. And epaulettes and button pockets and everything. Excuse me, and this just being short sleeves. But again, one being more of a khaki, the other being more of a yellow British tan. Another camo, the 3-color desert. You can find different ones. I don't usually like to wear a t-shirt by itself, but again, if you're going to wear, you know, a jacket, maybe a t-shirt instead of the collar. Under a vest. Again, more of a blue collar standard camping look than a true classic safari look. Depends on what you're trying to achieve. If you're going for aesthetics or whatever. This was the one I showed already. Another Orvis in the darker color. So again, you know, contrast. More of the autumn. The pure linen, I think this one. This one is size large. I think it has the epaulets. This one's a short sleeve. I don't think they offer this exact shirt anymore. The one I just threw over there, I think, is the one that replaced this one, but I was just throwing it out. Again, this a little bit more of a brown than a tan. I showed the green one of this last time, the light green, the grasslands. This a little more woodland color, maybe, than safari. Again, we're splitting hairs, maybe, because it will fade. Last smidge, but no epaulettes, no sleeve pockets, but it does have the tab, the rolled tab, which is one of the things that is hit or miss, because I think the bean one, these are just the exact same shirt as the previous, but in the larger size that fit me. I don't remember if the bean ones have the sleeve tab or not. So don't quote me on that. And the Cabela's, I think, does. I don't remember. I'm wearing it and I can't feel it, so maybe not. So yeah, so this was the Orvis of the newer fabric ones. But they also had this color for a while there. I don't think they still do this color, but they might. This is a medium of the older one. So again, I think way too bright, but a nice pilot shirt. So this one, you got the detail there. You have no epaulettes. You have pretty good cargo pockets. You have the contrast buttons. The fabric is this really lightweight, kind of loose canvas. But again, I think this is a linen. This is called the Active Fit. Yeah. Oh, and silk. Linen, cotton, and silk. Linen, cotton, and silk. So that's the newer one. Whereas their other one, another one that I showed before, maybe a ripstop pants, cargo pockets, not a true army pant BDU, but similar. Okay, I did bring this in. Not an exact match. I have some other Orvis stuff that matches a little closer, but this is the field shirt. I can't remember if I showed this or not. In the canvas, does have the epaulettes, does have the bellows pockets. So this one's a large, so it should still fit. Don't know if they still offer this exact fabric or not. Don't know if they still offer this exact color or not. Pretty sure they offer this color, but you can see it's not exactly perfect. It's pretty close. Pretty close. But of course, this pants you could wear with the lighter color shirt. Get away with it. But then the fabric's going to be different, slightly different texture, yada, yada, yada. This one goes pretty good with the bush hat. But those are the pleated pants that just ended up in here on accident. I showed these already. This is the exact same shirt in a different color. More of this. I think this is supposed to be the green, but here's a pair of their pants that are not quite a green. They're not okay. I forget what they called this, but it has traveler's pants maybe. It has 80,000 pockets, and I think I had this cuff added because they were too long. I don't think it came cuffed like that. I don't know if they still offer this, but it has a little bit of elastic. Has this kind of snappy tab adjuster thingy, but mostly useless. Kind of more there for looks. Slash pockets, but they're not true slash pockets. Has this extra Velcro thing with the pocket on top of the pocket. Again, what I was talking about with those other pants that I had modified to eliminate all that extra bulk and junk. Does not have a flap on the rear. Not reinforced knees like military. Not reinforced seat like military. But an okay autumn color, I guess. A shirt that's maybe more of a mountain shirt. I don't think anybody too much on a real safari wears plaid very much. But if you're doing a look instead of, an actual hunt, then maybe I added the sleeve tabs to this. So that's just an old shirt that fits me good and has outlasted many, many other shirts. Those lightweight short sleeve ones I showed earlier, this is the same Cabela's one in a darker brown. Again, maybe a little too dark for the sun exposure. All right. Bean had introduced a camo version of the canvas shirt. It's not the same as the field shirt. It's their lighter weight canvas. It's lighter weight than the Cabela's canvas, but I don't know if you can still find very many of the Cabela's canvas. Don't know if they'll offer this pattern again or not. But it's literally just their regular canvas shirt. Well, this was the same camo as that hat that I showed earlier. And of course, sportsman got it on. Again, what camo you can get away with, I don't know. Not camo, but again, the tropical Hawaiian thing, your results may vary. Kind of depends on which one you get and what you get. Of course, the yellow bean tropic weight one, the older one, I think is kind of a good subtle jungle pattern. Jungle. This is the bean canvas in a plain, forget which color they call this. This is a short sleeve one. And so, you know, again, no epaulettes, but you do have the flat pockets. Just a flat front, no bellows. And we're not focused again. Damn this blurry ass camera. Okay. Well, anyway, they have this, you know, in typically a bunch of different colors in different seasons. So, and again, a little bit darker than a lighter one. This being another Blair. This was a light pilot shirt with a nice open weave with epaulettes and sleeve tabs and pockets and things. I think I showed this in a video at some point. I have other ones that I've worn. Again, if you're worried about it getting snagged on something and worried about durability, this might be slightly more durable, but this might be slightly more breathable. These can feel kind of wet and slimy when you first sweat in them, but they're also overall like one of my favorite go-to fabrics for most of the year, depending on what I'm doing. I showed these already. These are the same things. I just use long sleeve and short sleeve, so you can find them without having to modify them. I held up the other one already that's out of the bag. Like I said, this is lighter weight than the bean fabric, so it's great for hiking. Featherweight shirt. Looks like Bella's wanting. Whereas this stuff, again, I showed the green one of this that I had not worn. It might be a little too dark, but it's the ripstop, and it's kind of a heavier weight. This one, of course, which I've worn on the channel, which is a JCPenney. There's other brands that are similar with the more slub fabric. Also a little too heavy. I have a beige one somewhere. It didn't make the cut today. I have a whole bucket of more stone-colored stuff, and that one's faded so far that it's lighter than this now, so I didn't bother to bring it because I already showed, like, you know, this. So, but again, a brown pair of pants with a lighter top can work, whereas a brown shirt, again, not necessarily a true safari look, more pilot. That doesn't have any epaulettes. It's also short sleeves, so no roll tabs and all that. Then these Wrangler ones, I found in a couple different colors with the pull tab pockets. I like this for kind of a pilot look, but again, it doesn't have epaulettes. I don't remember if it has roll tabs. I doubt it. Sleeve, no. Just a work shirt, but this, again, is a canvas that's a little bit heavier than the bean canvas. Not that you're going to be able to tell. Not quite as heavy as the Cabela's, the older canvas ones, but a little heavier than the bean canvas. So decent for 2 seasons, more than 3 seasons, I guess. Whereas this a little better for 3 seasons, depending on where you live. I live here, so those are my seasons. So wow, yeah, like I said, so like yeah, this is a little bit lighter than this, but it's also twill, not canvas, right? Is that what we determined? Or is this canvas one? I don't remember. I think this is twill one, and the other one was, the Orvis one was the canvas one, right? And did I show that one? I didn't think. Okay, so that's kind of almost everything. So the last part 5-1. How do you make a 6-6 part? Not 5-6. Whatever. The thing I didn't go into too much in the previous video that I can't still really go into that much here. I talked about them in other videos. I have videos all about boots and boots and boots and boots and boots. So you can find the one about Novato's boots or whatever. They had some outsoles that were more better maybe for that sandy terrain than the rocky mountains we have here. But again, they're still not going to have any arch support, so you might not like that underfoot. But a lot of the PHs are going to wear lower hiking boots with a gaiter now and a pair of shorts instead of, anything traditional. Now on Yellowstone 1923, as well as Ghost in the Darkness and Out of Africa, they're all wearing the tall, full knee boots, but they have different style ones. Val Kilmer's had buckles on the inside. Redford had some kind of lacing system where they could turn down, and I have a photo of that, but it doesn't really translate well for a thumbnail. The guy in 1923, he had the tall boots with the speed hooks, and I'm pretty sure he's tall enough that he needed 16-inch tall boots. I think if I was going to get them, 14 would probably be high enough for an average guy. 12, 13 is kind of a cowboy height. This is a 10, and this is actually pretty high for most people for a work boot. So you might not find it too comfortable to go much more than a 10. Army boots are typically an 8. Work boots are typically a 6, or traditional army boots. So if you go in from a 6-inch boot to a 10-inch boot, you're going to notice, and then if it went up to a 14-inch boot, the vanity of me wants to order a pair of them just for the look, but how much use would I really ever get out of that? It's not like the old Safari 100 years ago where you're living out there and you're walking, constantly, and no vehicles practically and all that kind of thing. And so you're really, trying to protect your legs as much as possible and this and that. Where something like this is probably more than enough for most people. But in the 1923, he did have the speed hooks all the way up on, like I said, I think it was a 16 high boot, and it looked cool. But I don't know, again, how historically accurate that is, if speed hooks were even around then. I know I had a friend who had a tall boot a long time ago, and it had not speed hooks, it had laces, and it would take him half a day to lace up his stupid boots and take them back off. So I guess you'd really want the speed hooks even more than I, want them on this high of a boot. I don't really care for it as much. Yeah, it's a little bit maybe quicker, but I don't know. I have other boots that have the eyelets that got one pair more recently. And so a lot of people just complain that this takes forever, but if I'm putting them on and leaving them on, like, if I'm not planning on taking them off and putting them on and I'm not in a Japanese household if I'm wearing something like this, right? But these are not necessarily safari boots. This with the big ass logger stack heel and the extra arch support. Most guys might not want that much heel stack. They might go with the more traditional heel instead of a logger heel. And these, of course, being a cowboy boot, which is for, horses more than really walking around. We still walk around in them anyway, just to look cool or whatever. But that's got, the Packer boot. And I don't necessarily recommend that for the safari look or, again, practicality out actually hiking. But again, if you're going for the old classic look before the 50s or whatever, it would be more the leather that kind of thing. So I guess I could have talked about footwear and accessories and had that been a part earlier. But again, I don't necessarily recommend sneakers or tennis shoes. You're not really going to want to wear boat shoes or loafers or dress shoes, or even all the versions of maybe dressy boots that can be hunting boots, some better than others. But as I found when I was hiking, that warehouse work boots don't translate very well, but how well they would perform in a safari situation might vary. The wedge, I would say the wedge soles, not at all, but the regular heels, maybe, depending on how comfortable it is. If you're used to wearing your Timberlands, then I guess, but I don't know that they're necessarily considered a safari shoe as much as a chukka boot. So I already have videos about chukka boots, and you can find various qualities of those. The suede ones being, again, probably the more practical ones than the full leather ones, yada, 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 and a lot less expensive typically. So all that. Whereas this is, of course, a full grain leather, not a rough out, which is the ones that I have. I think they want to be called rough out, but they're too thin. Probably they're probably more of a suede. They're pretty cheap. They're Sportsman's Guide ones. I think if you were going to look for ones that you'd actually want to take into the bush, you'd want to look into something a little sturdier than those. But again, if you're only going on a trip for like a week or two, you're not necessarily going to want to invest, $800 in a pair of 14-inch full leather. However much that's going to, probably more than $800 maybe even. And again, the real traditional ones like Val Kilmer, whatever, you'd have to get something like that made custom, I'm sure. I don't know where to find that kind of thing. That again doesn't have the laces, which I think is probably why the Yellowstone people just had something like this made up, because it was probably a lot easier to get that done in a shorter amount of time, because these are just rivets, bang, 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 as opposed to whatever other things going on. Don't know the costuming of that program and all that, who handled all that or whatever. Okay, so this is a super long video, but of course it was going to be, because it's kind of my opus that I've been putting off for 2 years already. And I wanted to be pretty thorough, even though I didn't necessarily touch everything. So if you have any questions or comments, there might be a part 3, but it won't be anytime soon, because I just did part 1 and this one now and blah, blah, blah. So naturally, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments, and I'll try and cover anything I didn't show, which I showed like a million things. So like this is long. So happy hunting and good eating and all that stuff, and let me know. Okay.